In our main story, the Food for Export Masterclass FEM was launched on the 29th of January, presenting an exciting opportunity for women doing business in the horticulture, dairy, food processing and food export sectors in Zimbabwe. The masterclass has been organized by the Netherlands Embassy in Harare together with the Zimbabwe Agricultural Development Trust, ZATT, HIVOS, Zimtrade and Dutch Senior Experts Organization, PUM. The program, which is funded by HIVOS and the Netherlands Embassy, will give 20 women access to the best of Dutch and Zimbabwean food production, value addition and market entry expertise, tailor-made to match their needs. Applications are still open to women entrepreneurs working in agriculture, dairy or food processing. Joining us on the Mint today is the Netherlands Ambassador to Zimbabwe, Zambia and Malawi, Barbara van Helmond. Ambassador, welcome to the Mint. Now,
thank you.
What exactly is the Food for Masterclass, Food for Export Masterclass program?
It's a tongue twister, isn't it?
It's a tongue twister.
Food
it's the first time you're doing it.
Masterclass, yes, FEM. It's the first time. You're right, and we're inviting 20 female entrepreneurs in the agricultural sector to apply. We're offering a training, but not a normal training. A quite exceptional training. It's a masterclass, so workshops and on-site consulting for female entrepreneurs in horticulture, in dairy or in food processing.
But I mean, it's a very focused course, of course.
Yes.
I mean, the idea of the course is to try and teach the applicants the necessary skills that they require to do business, basically.
Absolutely, to do business, but also to export. Because that's what we need. I think Zimbabwe needs an increase in export, especially in horticultural produce, in dairy and in food processed, well, in food. And we'll be offering, through the partners that you just mentioned, we'll be offering those customized masterclass.
Because it will also be like workshops, training workshops with experts coming in to teach them the right skills.
Absolutely. So workshops to teach them the skills to export. That's not only on production, but also on packaging and on trade rules, and of course also on value chain management and on
I mean, that's important, because I think a lot of people forget about value chains and in terms of the cost build up from getting something from the field, so to speak, to market. And also what's important as well in business is the concept of having business plans and being able to actually have a clear strategy. Is that also being taught in the masterclass?
You're absolutely right. The bankable business plans, because you can't do any business or start producing if you don't have the finance. So business plans should be written and should be bankable as well. Should be in such a format that a bank will be able to read it and decide whether they're going to finance it.
Now, why has the Dutch Embassy decided to enter this program? I mean, it's the first time, as you said. Why is the Dutch Embassy seen a need for this in Zimbabwe?
Well, there are three reasons actually. First of all, agriculture. That's a priority area in Zimbabwe, but also in the Netherlands. So that's actually what links the Netherlands to Zimbabwe, agriculture. And just to be precise, that the agricultural or the horticultural produce, 75% of the Zimbabwean horticultural produce is exported to the Netherlands. It's not all consumed in the Netherlands, it's re-exported again. But the main destination of your horticultural produce is the Netherlands. So what we'd like to do is actually increase trade volumes between Zimbabwe and the Netherlands. Second reason is the private sector development. Clearly, Zimbabwe's private sector development needs a push. And SMEs, small and medium enterprises, are seen as the main drivers of private sector development. Then the third point is why do we focus on female entrepreneurs? Because we think, and we've seen it, that especially women need an extra push to develop their businesses, and to create, in the end, a more equal society.
Right.
Because, yeah.
I mean, gender equality is obviously very important to the embassy. Why is it so important, and what is your thrust towards gender equality, particularly through this program?
Well, because worldwide we can see that countries, more equal societies, so more equality between men and women, are more wealthy, more happy, and more developed countries in general.
I mean, I saw the United Nations said in a society where 50% of the women are educated, people are better off, people are happier, because they always say that the woman is the breadbasket of the family, the one that holds the family together. So the idea, but they still need a push because they aren't represented in other areas of the society, are they? Women, as well, as much as they should be.
No, you're absolutely right. They're not represented in the formal, formal society. So you can, and that's also the same case in the Netherlands, a bit less than in Zimbabwe, of course, but women are the main supporters of their families. I've read about a research that 90% of women normally reinvest 90% of their income through formal employment or informal employment, but they reinvest 90% of their income in their families, while men apparently reinvest 35%. So that's
another reason why.
And so then you could see that you could say that women are the main drivers in anti-poverty, or in trying to alleviate poverty.
How do you see the gender equality in the country at the moment? I know it's a broad question, but generally, how do you see it? Do you see progress being made in certain areas? Do you see there's more to be done?
There's absolutely more to be done. First of all, I mean, the gender inequality is a global phenomenon. I do see that in Zimbabwe, there's still a lot of work to do. I've been here for 2 years, and I do see progress in actually discussing gender issues like gender-based violence. So I think there's more openness, and it's being discussed. The role of men is also being discussed. I'm actually impressed by the willingness of men to discuss the issue of gender inequality, and especially gender-based violence. Unfortunately, with the economic challenges in Zimbabwe, you do see that the first one hit are the women.
But your embassy is also doing other things for women. I mean, you have Human Rights Fund is funding shelter and support for victims. Maybe talk about that briefly.
Absolutely, and we're very proud of that. Well, not proud that it's actually needed, but the fact that we've found a few organizations that are able to build shelters and also provide medical assistance to victims of gender-based violence, plus legal assistance as well, in order to report their cases and prosecute the perpetrators.
Okay, now getting back to FEM. Now, some of the skills of the highly focused program will cover training on production methods, as you said, certification, value chains, and producing bankable business plans. We spoke about that. But tell us about the partners. What partners are you using, and what is their role in the masterclass?
Well, we have HEVOS is involved, and SNV. Those are two Dutch organizations. They have a lot of expertise in agricultural and actually small-scale agriculture, and also linking smaller farmers or smaller enterprises and entrepreneurs to markets and financing as well. So that's one. Then we have the ZADT. They'll be involved in the bankable business plans and the financing as well. Then we have the PUM. The PUM, they'll provide the expertise, so the experts that will be available for on-site consulting on the respective farms or within the companies of the participants to provide them the expertise and the advice that they actually need.
And of course, Zimtrade, you're working with Zimtrade as
and
well.
And Zimtrade, yes.
Yeah. So let me get this straight. So PUM will actually, because the women have to have some recognized business, PUM will actually visit their businesses and analyze what they're doing in their business and come up with recommendations on how should they improve.
Yes, and that's exactly what PUM has been doing in Zimbabwe for the last few years. And they're good at it. They've been very effective. And we have many Zimbabwean companies that have benefited from PUM expertise on site, and we'll be offering that to the 20 participants.
Now, one important aspect of the course appears to be networking and personal development, which is something which is really missed in a lot of other programs. Why do you find that important?
Well, apart from knowing your business and knowing your customer and finding the right employees, you also need to be confident as an entrepreneur, because there's a market out there, there's competition, and you need to be confident to attract finance, you need to be confident to sell your product. And and in general, women tend to be less confident. So we'll try to provide them with some personal effectiveness training so that they can show the rest that they can lead and they can innovate and they can take risk.
And also networking, because networking is critical, not just for business. I mean, sometimes they say it's who you know, isn't it, that gets you the business deal. So that's critical for women to learn how to network effectively.
Absolutely. Network, be confident, have a pitch ready so that they can pitch their company and show them what they're worth.
Because the course also covers, I suppose, marketing and sales skills, I suppose.
Yes, marketing, sales skills, and networking as well. So how do you create a supportive network, and how do you activate it? And
okay. Now, obviously, exports. It's in the name of the course or the program, Food for Export Masterclass. So, how would this contribute to increased exports? Because that's one of the goals of the program, is it not?
Yes, of course. That's the goal. The overriding goal is increased trade, and especially more trade income, export income for Zimbabwe. So, how are we going to increase it through this program? Well, hopefully the majority of the 20 participants will be able to give their company a push. They'll be able to meet the right requirements, the right quality of produce, so that they're able to export. So they will focus on export. Yes.
That's what PUM is doing, basically, say, because when you want to export to the EU, there are strict criteria for your product. So PUM is also going to teach the participants that.
Yes. So you're absolutely right. The European market has its standards, and PUM is the right organization. They've got the expertise on, and very specialized expertise on the standards that the entrepreneurs will have to reach in order to export to the European Union.
Okay, Ambassador Barbara van Helmont, thank you for appearing on The Mint.
You're welcome.
We will be putting down the contact details. So as we said, this is eligible for women. We'll be putting the contact details of where you can apply. So please rush and apply now. To be eligible for the Food for Export Masterclass FEM, applicants must be female, must have traceable experience in the fresh produce or dairy value chains, and preferably be running their own business or project with the potential to reach export markets. Women from all over Zimbabwe are encouraged to apply. The Netherlands Embassy and HIVAS support the Food for Export Masterclass to ensure that Dutch-Zimbabwean trade improves, but with more women taking leadership roles and growing their businesses. The Herald reports that Zimbabwe will start publishing year-on-year inflation statistics from this month, with the February 2019 to February 2020 figure expected next month. This follows the building of data on prices in the monocurrency system for 12 months. The development will help investors and business people to make informed decisions. The Zimbabwe National Statistical Agency, Zimstat, which collects and publishes the data, has indicated that it will widen the collection of prices data to involve more stakeholders. Year-on-year inflation data is critical in salary negotiations, court judgments, pricing of assets and liabilities such as bank loans. Finance and Economic Development Minister Professor Ntuli Ncube suspended the publication of year-on-year inflation data in July last year for 12 months from the February switch in currencies, a time limit that elapses this month. It was felt that it was difficult to compare prices from the multi-currency period and the period after liberalization of the foreign currency market and the introduction of the Zimbabwe dollar. Prices would, in effect, be compared in two currencies under two systems. Monthly inflation rates were still being published. Zimstat Director General Mr. Taguma Mahonde said the organization was ready to release data on year-on-year inflation. I quote, "The monetary policy reforms impacted on the computation of consumer price indices, as prices for the period prior to the introduction of the RTGS dollar were informed by multi-currency. As such, computation of year-on-year rate of inflation was no longer comparing like with like." Economist Mr. Eddie Cross said publishing year-on-year inflation data was important as it guides market makers and others. Another economist, Mr. Persistence Gwanyanya, said it was now possible for Zimstat to start publishing annual inflation statistics, as Zimbabwe had now reached a full financial cycle, which is necessary for comparison purposes. He further said, "As we witnessed, if you stop publishing official annual inflation as a country, others will do so, and you will leave the market with no choice but to follow them, even dubious ones, which has far-reaching consequences for the economy." During the time that government was not releasing year-on-year inflation data, economists such as US-based Professor Steve Hanke started publishing what they thought were the inflation statistics. Stopping publication of annual inflation statistics is not new in Zimbabwe, as it was done before adoption of the multi-currency regime in 2009. Police crackdowns on illicit trade in South Africa's major cities in the second half of 2019, along with civil riots, has contributed to a fall in informal employment, said FNB senior economist Siphamandla Mukwanazi. Statistics South Africa released its quarterly labour force survey for the last 3 months of 2019, which showed that the unemployment rate remained unchanged at 29.1%, the highest since the start of the QLF survey in 2008. Mukwanazi said it was disappointing to see that the weakness in employment growth is now spilling over to the non-agricultural informal sector, which employed about 3% fewer people than the year before. For the past 3 years, informal employment growth outpaced job growth in the formal sector. Mukwanazi said it was also disconcerting that the traditional increase in temporary employment during December did not materialize. Instead, the number of employed people declined by 108,000 in the fourth quarter of 2019 compared to the same period in the previous year, he added. According to Statistics South Africa, this was the first time on record that the unemployment rate did not decrease in the fourth quarter. The largest job cuts were recorded in the utility sector, minus 10.5% from the previous year, construction, minus 8.8% year-on-year, and manufacturing, minus 2.6% year-on-year. Job losses in the finance sector are starting to show in the numbers, with employment in the sector declining by 1.7% year-on-year for the second consecutive quarter. Last year, Standard Bank announced that it was closing more than 100 branches, with some 1,800 workers affected. Nedbank and Absa have also cut jobs. The only sectors which saw growth in employment numbers were transport and trade, 4.7% year-on-year, government, 4.6%, and agriculture, 4.2% year-on-year. Analysts expect that job losses will worsen overall in 2020. Telkom, Massmart, that's Macro, Game, and Dion Wired, Glencore, and Aspen are some of the companies that have announced job losses. The Statistics South Africa numbers show that of the 2.4 million South Africans aged 15 to 34 years old, 40.1% were not in employment, education, or training in the fourth quarter, a decrease of 0.3% percentage point compared to the third quarter. Eskom is in a death spiral. It owes 450 billion rand, equal to almost a tenth of the size of the South African economy. It is not generating nearly enough cash to fund its debt repayments. For some time, Eskom's former Chief Restructuring Officer Freeman Namvalo has been working on plans to deal with the debt. This reportedly included swapping Eskom debt for government bonds. Then COSATU came along and threw a bit of a spanner in the works with its own debt proposal, discussed at the National Economic Development and Labour Council, NEDLAC, last week, at which President Cyril Ramaphosa and even business leaders have welcomed unexpectedly. So what is COSATU's plan? Well, COSATU wants the Public Investment Corporation, which manages money on behalf of the Government Employees Pension Fund, GEPF, as well as the Industrial Development Corporation and the Development Bank of South Africa, to take on 254 billion rand of Eskom's debt. In exchange, COSATU outlined fundamental conditions for the funding, and these included a proper staff audit must be conducted, those who have looted from Eskom must be arrested and their assets seized. Coal suppliers and IPP generation contractors must be forced to reduce their prices, and Eskom must be able to generate its own renewable energy. A comprehensive debt recovery plan to be implemented to recover the billions owed by departments, state-owned enterprises, municipalities, communities, including Soweto, and consumers at large. A single payment account to be established for all consumers to pay Eskom directly, bypassing municipalities. The free electricity allocation to indigent households should be increased. There must be worker representation on the Eskom board, and all buildings in South Africa must be required to install locally produced solar panels over a 5-year period. The debt will be moved to a special purpose vehicle. COSATU doesn't see the PIC earning anything, including interest, from taking on the Eskom debt. COSATU proposes that, via the PIC and the GEPF, a portion of civil service pensions will be invested in the new Eskom vehicle, which will house a large chunk of the debt. But even if the pension funds lose money on the Eskom investment, this should in theory not affect civil servant pension payouts. That's because civil servant pensions are defined benefit, meaning they are guaranteed a specified level of pension payouts. So government, read taxpayers, they'll have to cough up if the pension funds lose money and can't cover the guaranteed pensions. Ramaphosa is reported to be favorably disposed to COSATU's proposal, according to a spokesperson, but said he doesn't want to undermine the investment mandates or fiduciary duties of the PIC, the IDC, and the Development Bank. Meanwhile, according to reports, neither the GEPF nor the PIC have been approached about the scheme. One of the main problems is that it will effectively introduce prescribed assets, which means that government will, for the first time since apartheid, force pension funds to invest in certain assets. Bailing out Eskom using pension fund money may encourage other state-owned enterprises to also try to go the same route. Eskom's operational problems are as important and urgent to solve as its debt. Its costs are too high and is in desperate need of restructuring. How else can Eskom's debt problem be solved? Well, a variety of remedies in combination have been proposed in the past. One of the plans was the creation of a new vehicle to host Eskom's debt, which would be managed by Treasury. Government could also directly take over Eskom's bonds. Eskom could secure green funding from development finance institutions in Europe. Loans of between 150 and 200 billion rand at discounted interest rates could be given to Eskom in return for moving away from coal-based power generation and decommissioning coal stations. Then there's the option of renegotiating terms with Eskom debt holders. This could involve lowered rates and stretching bond terms. Twitter will begin to label and in some cases remove doctored or manipulated photos, audio and videos that are designed to mislead people. The company said last week that the new rules prohibit sharing synthetic or manipulated material that's likely to cause harm. Material that is manipulated but isn't necessarily harmful may get a warning label. But deciding what might cause harm could be difficult to define, and some material will likely fall into a grey area. Twitter said in a blog post, "There will be a challenge and we will make errors along the way. We appreciate the patience, however, we're committed to doing this right." Twitter said it considers threats to the safety of a person or a group serious harm, along with the risk of mass violence or widespread civil unrest. But harm could also mean threats to people's privacy or ability to freely express themselves, Twitter said. This could include stalking, voter suppression and intimidation epithets, and material that aims to silence someone. Google, Facebook, Twitter, and other technology services are under intense pressure to prevent interference in the 2020 US elections after they were manipulated 4 years ago by Russian-connected actors. As with many of Twitter's policies, including those banning hate speech or abuse, success will be measured by how well the company can enforce it. Even with rules in place, enforcement can be uneven and slow. This is likely to be especially true for misinformation, which can spread quickly on social media, even with safeguards in place. Facebook, for instance, has been using third-party fact-checkers to debunk false stories on its site for 3 years. While the efforts are paying off, the battle against misinformation is far from over. Twitter said it was committed to seeking input from its users on such rules. Twitter said it posted a survey in 6 languages and received 6,500 responses from around the world. According to the company, the majority of respondents said misleading tweets should be labeled, though not everyone agreed on whether they should be removed or left up. You've been watching The Mint. I'm Andy Hodges. Please follow us on our Facebook page, Zim Papers TV Network, our website, ztn.co.zw, and on YouTube under ZTN. Your comments are welcome via our Twitter handle at ZTN News, and of course via Facebook. Join us here on The Mint every weekday morning at 6 a.m. Central African Time. Well, that's it for me this morning. Goodbye. Have a profitable business week, and you all be safe.